Right, hello everybody. Welcome to today's podcast for the trading week ahead for the 24th to the 28th of August. It is the 24th of August now. My name is Adrian Boothie. I'm the head of trading here at Trinsel, and as ever, I'm joined by our chief analyst and chief executive, Jerry Miller. Hi, Jerry. How are you?
Hello, hi. Yeah, not too bad, thanks.
Good. Quite a light week for events this week, but we shall certainly blitz our way through it as ever. Jerry, do you want to kick us off with some of the main events we need to be sharpening our pencils for?
Yeah, sure. You hit the nail on the head. There is not a lot going on this week, but there are some sort of macro events, i.e. not data releases, that are worth looking at. It's probably going to be dominated this week by two events. One, the first 4 days of the week, which is we had the Democratic National Convention last week with the adoption of Joe Biden as the candidate to run for president. On behalf of the Democratic Party. You've now got the Republican National Convention happening. I think it happens, is it North Carolina, somewhere like that? But wherever it's happening, it's not really happening because most of it is online, and there's lots of pre-recorded speeches, etc., from Pence and Trump eventually, I think, from the White House on Thursday. But realistically, it happens online, but it says it's happening in Charlotte in North Carolina. And we mentioned it in our previous podcast about Trump. You can expect the unexpected. He's going to try and rally his troops and the Republican movement to try and secure his second term, which is not looking that likely at the moment. But it's still very early.
How far is he behind now?
It's about 8%, but worryingly, they refer, or the analysts, the pollsters refer to the key battleground states, and that's because there are lots of states that never change control. They're always Republican or always Democrat. So it's the key battleground states, and those are the likes of Arizona, Texas, Florida, Ohio, and these are the ones where
there are a lot of votes as well, don't there? There's electoral college votes, I think it's called, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The way it works is not by the number of votes. Obviously, Hillary Clinton actually got 3 million more votes than Trump in the last presidential election because of the college votes that are given to the candidate who wins that state. You can often have someone getting a minority of fewer votes than the other candidate and still becoming president, which is exactly what happened with Donald Trump. But there's a lot of water to go under, a lot of bridges at the moment, and I think what the Democratic Party don't want to do, they do not want to be complacent. But I think they're a lot more organised this year, that's for sure. I feel there is a lot more unity, and this is us Limes, us Brits, viewing from afar, really. So you might say, well, what do I know? I know what I read. That's basically it. Fake news. Yeah. But anyway, it's a 4-day convention. We'll be hearing bits and pieces coming out, and they'll be interviewing various people, etc. And there'll be a lot of attacks on Biden and career politicians and all that stuff.
And I guess you might think, well, what's that necessarily got to do with the markets? It's political, but we saw Biden last week did a huge green push, didn't he? Which of course would have been quite important for resource stocks out in the US.
Yeah,
so things will have an impact on the stock market, particularly if it's seen that candidate might have a chance of winning.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I read over the weekend from this economic group, the Capital Economics, and they write some very good material, and it's just interesting to read that if I interpret it correctly, that the markets are probably going to do well regardless of whether Trump or Biden get in, and the perceived wisdom was that if the Democrats get in, there's going to be a change in the tax rates that companies and people pay, which won't necessarily be good for the stock market. But in fact, the view now is that the stock markets are going to do well regardless of who gets in, because of what central banks and governments are doing. Certainly in the US, central bank, the Federal Reserve, and the US government have thrown so much at it that it's unlikely to dent the stock market in the short to medium term, even if Biden gets in, which is interesting.
Yeah. Okay. And what about the sort of the more normal data, shall we say?
Well,
Tuesday we've got well, not a huge amount actually. I'm going to have to.
well, Adrian, that's a low impact number for some reason. In
Yeah, I
fact,
was
Forex
just
Factory's
thinking that myself.
wisdom, for some reason, they've ascribed that you can see it there, the German final GDP there at 7 o'clock on Tuesday. It's still bad. They're expecting the same as the initial release, but that's the final reading for the second quarter GDP in Germany. Remember, that's a quarterly change as opposed to the annualized rate that they do in the US. The UK has had the worst out of the G7 of the collapse in its GDP, but actually it's having the biggest rebound as well. So the Lord taketh away and the Lord giveth, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Durable goods, Wednesday, 130. So that's a bit of a contraction. Well, a bit of a pullback from last month's numbers.
Yeah, it's a strong number the previous month, but unless it's particularly bad, I don't think it's going to hit the market much. It excludes the sort of big ticket items, aeroplane sales, and I'm thinking to myself, who's sold any aeroplanes? Well,
Yeah.
apparently one airline has gone and bought 4 Boeing 737 Max planes, the ones that were grounded. So there are some planes being sold, but
Yeah, but he probably got them for the cost of a packet of matchsticks, didn't he?
Well, there you go. The fact that four planes being bought hit the headlines just goes to show you how desperate things are there. But
Yes, it's only 4. It's a plane that's grounded at a time when nobody wants aeroplanes.
yeah, and no one's flying. Yeah, that's interesting. And then we have crude oil inventories in the afternoon, later on in the afternoon in the US, which, well, crude oil, quite frankly, that the inventories really refer to US WTI inventories. So it can have an effect on the market, but I think the market, in the crude oil market, is just following the stock market, and it's incredibly dull at the moment.
Yes, it definitely is. Thursday, GDP in the States.
Yeah, they've got these weird readings. They have 4 readings. I mean, what happens when they collect the GDP data? It takes a long time for them to get a clear picture. The first reading, you would think that they would call it the preliminary one, but actually the first one is the advanced reading. And then they issue their second reading, which is called the prelim number, which is all a bit weird, a mixture of misunderstanding of words, really. Anyway, it's the second reading. That's probably the best
That
way I
doesn't
can
sound
describe it.
like the Americans.
Yeah, to get their words confused, or to give them different meanings. Yeah, a slight adjustment really, but nothing much, unless it's wildly different. So remember, that is the quarterly change, but annualized. So if they carried on in the way that they had been going in the second quarter, and it was into the third quarter and the fourth quarter, the result would be a 32.5% contraction in GDP by the end of the year. That's not what's happening. You can sort of divide it by 4, and it's a lot better than the UK. We had a contraction of 20% quarter on quarter, which would be the equivalent of, well, complete catastrophe, basically. But they're doing a lot better in the United States. In fact, we've had the worst contraction out of the G7 economies.
Okay, and then finally,
reversing rapidly.
Yes, exactly. And just very quickly, Jerry, before we do move on, the Jackson Hole Symposium. Who's Jackson and what's his hole got to do with it?
Okay, well, Jackson Hole, it's in Wyoming. It's called Jackson Hole. It's called the Jackson Hole because in days gone by, trappers and hunters, etc., when they got into Jackson Hole, it was quite difficult to get out of, so it was referred to as a hole. And a symposium is basically just a conference, a gathering of an academic gathering, I believe. So that's basically what's happening. It's the central bankers, the great and the good from the central bankers around the world. They used to meet in Jackson Hole. They're not going to be meeting for obvious reasons because of COVID. So it'll all be done remotely. The press don't get invited, but a lot of what's said and discussed does leak out, and the press are there, but they're just not allowed to attend any of the meetings, etc. And it's a key time for central bankers, really, because they're working with governments to try to stave off the effects of this. Well, what let's be very frank, is a self-inflicted economic collapse that happened, March, April, May, and it's that destruction in jobs, in businesses, and it's the recovery from that these central bankers are having to work with governments to make sure happens without too much damage being wrought in the long term on these economies. So it's an important meeting, Adrian, that is for sure. What will come out of it? Time will tell.
We'll find out, won't we? Yeah.
Yeah, we will. We will.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it, everybody. So what we'll do, just very quickly, is have a quick run through of our events the week. A few live trading events coming up this week. I'll blitz through this really quickly. If you want to come along and see us in action and see us trading and looking at some trading opportunities and actually learn one of our trading strategies, you can come along. We've got 3 live trading events this week. You'd be absolutely welcome to join us and log in live wherever you are. So just go to the webpage bit.ly/learnts, so bit.ly/learnts, and we'll teach you what we know, basically. So please make sure you come along to that. And otherwise, everybody have a great week's trading, and we'll be back with you this time next week again. Bye-bye for now.